What if the most dangerous creature you'll ever face isn't hiding in a forest, lurking under your bed, or waiting at the end of a dark alley, that is already inside you? Not a metaphorical inner demon, not just your bad habits or guilty pleasures. I mean a predator raw, instinctive, merciless, wearing your face until the moment it decides to take over. We're taught to imagine monsters as out there, the vampire in the coffin, the ghost in the attic, the wolf beyond the tree line. But some of our oldest myths warn that the line between the hunter and the hunted is far thinner than we'd like to believe. In many cultures, the wolf has always been more than an animal. It's been a warning, a symbol, sometimes even a sacred guide. But there's a particular thread of myth that runs deeper, an ancient idea that the human and the wolf are separated by little more than choice and sometimes a curse. If you love ancient myths, dark legends, and untold mysteries, hit like and subscribe to Tales Mythology now. Don't forget to tap the bell so you never miss another legendary journey. Tonight, I want to take you across time through Greek mountain rituals, Norse battlefields, medieval courts, and the fog-drenched hills of France to trace the shifting identity of the werewolf. Because this is not just a story about shapeshifting, it's about what it means to lose control, and why that idea terrifies us more than any fang or claw ever could. Long before Hollywood gave us silver bullets and full moons, the earliest wolfmen weren't infected or cursed in the modern sense. They were punished. The legend of King Acastus of Arcadia begins not in darkness, but in arrogance. Arcadia itself was a rugged, untamed part of ancient Greece, a land the poets said was touched by gods, yet shadowed by human ambition. Acastus was a ruler of intimidating presence and a pride that often crossed into cruelty. So when a humble traveler arrived at his palace one evening, most kings might have offered bread, wine, a bed for the night. But Acastus saw an opportunity for a test, or perhaps a trap. He didn't know, how could he, that this traveler was no ordinary man. It was Zeus himself, disguised, roaming the earth to observe the conduct of mortals. Now here's where Acastus's nature turned truly dark. The king ordered a captive from his dungeons to be slaughtered, cooked, and served to his guest. His reasoning was as twisted as the act itself. If this traveler ate human flesh without protest, surely he could not be divine. But as the feast began, the air thick with the heavy scent of roasted meat, Zeus remained silent at first. Then, with a blaze of light and a roar that shook the stone, the god revealed himself. And the punishment came. Not death, something worse. Acastus's limbs cracked and contorted. His skin split as fur erupted from his flesh. His jaw elongated into a muzzle. His fingernails curled into claws. His mind remained human, but his body became the body of a predator. Zeus's words burned into him. If you would act as a predator, then a predator you shall be. For the rest of his life, Acastus wandered the wilderness as a wolf. Not a mindless beast, but a man trapped behind golden eyes, unable to speak, forever aware of his exile from the human world. This is more than a punishment story. It's a warning about hubris, the dangerous belief that one can test, trick, or outwit higher laws. And it planted one of the first seeds of what would become the werewolf myth, the idea that the monster is born when humanity itself is stripped away by moral corruption. The myth of Acastus may have been the poetic telling, but like many myths, there may have been something real beneath the story. In the highlands of Arcadia lies Mount Lycaon, a place that whispers to archaeologists the way a loctatic whispers to a curious child. For centuries, it was said to be the site of the Lycaea, a secret festival honoring Zeus Lycaon, Zeus of the wolves. Ancient accounts speak of strange rituals, sacrifices, banquets where meat from animals, and at least according to the most chilling rumors from humans, was mixed together. The belief was simple, if terrifying. Eat even a single bite of human flesh, and the gods would strip you of your human form, condemning you to roam as a wolf for 9 years. If you resisted the temptation to eat human flesh during those 9 years, you could return to your human body on the 10th. Fail and the curse would never lift. Most modern historians once dismissed this as moralizing myth. But then, archaeology started to catch up with the legend. On the ash altar atop Mount Lycaon layered with centuries of burnt offerings, researchers found the skeleton of a teenage boy, buried among the charred remains of animals. It wasn't proof beyond all doubt, but it was enough to make the whispers of ancient fear louder. Standing on that mountain today, you can feel it, the way the wind moves, the way the ground seems older than the sky. If the Lycaea truly happened as the stories claim, it was more than a festival. It was a rite of boundary breaking, crossing the line between human and beast, not in form but in essence. And perhaps that's what gave the myth its power, not the transformation itself, but the idea that it could happen to anyone who let the wrong hunger in. Now, if the Greeks saw becoming a wolf as punishment, the Norse saw it as power. The Ulfedna, literally wolf-cloaked men, were elite warriors devoted to Odin, the god of wisdom, war, and death. They didn't become wolves in the flesh, but in spirit. Before battle, they would wrap themselves in wolf pelts, chant, and enter what the sagas call berserkerganga, trance-like fury, where fear, pain, and hesitation vanished. Witnesses claimed they bit their shields, howled like predators, and fought with inhuman strength, shrugging off blows that would fell ordinary soldiers. It wasn't just for show. The wolf was their guide, their totem. To fight like the wolf was to tap into something beyond human limitation, a primal reservoir of speed, aggression, and unity with the pack. But there's a course to living as the wolf. Once the rage faded, Ulfedna were left hollow, bodies aching from wounds they'd ignored, minds unsteady from the trance. They were honored in war but feared in peace. The same force that made them unstoppable on the battlefield made them unpredictable in the mead hall. As Norse society shifted under Christian influence, the wild ecstasy of the Ulfedna began to look more like possession than valor. Laws in Iceland and Norway outlawed the berserker gang, and the wolf warriors who once stood at Odin's right hand became dangerous relics of a chaotic past. Their story threads into the werewolf myth differently than the Greek one. Here, the transformation was chosen, not forced. But in both, the result was the same. Once you let the wolf in, it's hard to let it go. When Christianity spread across Europe, the lens through which the world saw wolves, and those who claimed to become them, changed forever. The old gods were silenced. Power not granted by the Christian God was now suspect, if not outright demonic. Transforming into a wolf was no longer seen as divine punishment or sacred warrior rite. It was a pact with the devil. Accusations of lycanthropy began to resemble accusations of witchcraft, and in some cases, they were prosecuted side by side. In the French town of Dole, a hermit named Gilles Garnier was accused of being a Laubgru. Villagers testified that he prowled the forests, killing children. Under interrogation, Garnier confessed, claiming a phantom had given him an ointment that allowed him to become a wolf, and that he brought human flesh home to feed his wife. Whether he was delusional, coerced, or guilty in some way, the court's verdict was brutal. He was burned alive. A few decades later, in Germany, Peter Stump was accused of far worse. Locals believed he'd been terrorizing the countryside for decades, killing livestock and people alike. Under torture, he confessed to owning a magical wolf belt given by Satan himself. He admitted to dozens of murders, including of his own family. The execution was staged as public theater, his body broken on the wheel, head severed, remains burned. Pamphlets retelling the horror spread across Europe, fueling hysteria. The message was clear. Werewolves weren't tragic figures. They were heretics, enemies of God, and killing them was an act of holy purification. But the tide began to turn. In the early 1600s, a French shepherd boy named Jean Grier boasted that he was a werewolf. He told friends he'd been given a wolf's skin and ointment by a strange man in the woods, and that he'd killed and eaten children. He was arrested and convicted, but instead of execution, the higher court in Bordeaux ruled that he was delusional, not demonic. He was sent to a monastery for life. It was a small shift, but symbolically, it was enormous. For the first time in centuries, a European court suggested that lycanthropy might be a mental disorder, not a mark of Satan. It was the beginning of the end for the werewolf trials, though not for the fear they left behind. From 1764 to 1767, the French countryside lived in terror of something unnatural. It was called the Beast of Gévaudan. Witnesses described it as larger than any wolf, with a reddish coat, massive jaws, and an unsettling intelligence. It attacked women and children, killing over 100 in just 3 years. The king sent soldiers, nobles organized hunts, hundreds joined the search, but the beast kept killing. The panic spread beyond Gévaudan, fueled by newspapers and pamphlets. It became one of Europe's first media-driven monsters. Finally, a local hunter named Jean chased or killed it, supposedly with silver bullets blessed by a priest. Whether that detail was true or not, it stuck, and silver became forever linked to werewolf lore. The beast's true nature remains unknown. Large wolf, hybrid animal, escaped exotic predator, or simply a story that grew bigger than the truth. Whatever it was, the Beast of Gévaudan marked a turning point. The werewolf was now a creature of both folklore and media sensation. The 20th century gave us the werewolf we know today, not from folklore, but from film. Universal Pictures' The Wolfman, in 1941, created the now familiar formula: a tragic man cursed to transform under the full moon, spreading the curse through a bite, and only killable with a silver bullet. None of those details came from ancient myth. They were inventions of the screen chosen for drama, symbolism, and visual power. But they were so effective that they became true in the public imagination, and something else shifted. The werewolf became a figure to pity as much as fear, a victim of his own body, struggling against the inevitable transformation. In a way, we made him more human than ever. From a cursed king to a berserker warrior, from a heretic in chains to a Hollywood anti-hero, the werewolf has always been more than a monster. It's a mirror. Every version of the myth forces us to ask, where is the line between civilization and savagery, between control and surrender? Maybe the reason these stories endure and that we believe in the transformation of man into wolf, but because we know the transformation of man into something dangerous is always possible. The monster isn't just out there, it's here, waiting for the wrong night, waiting for the wrong choice. And perhaps the real silver bullet is not in the weapon, but in knowing ourselves well enough to keep the wolf where it belongs. Thank you for joining Tales Mythology. If you enjoyed this story, like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to keep exploring mysterious legends from around the world. See you in the next adventure.